Okay. Back to where I was. Yeah. How do the conditions? Ooh, just admire that for a second in the sunlight. That's pretty. Um, the question is, or the talking point is, how do the structural conditions, both physical infrastructure, but also maybe like digital infrastructure, if we also consider the digital realm as something equivalent to a digital scape. So we've got our physical landscape and we've got our digital scape, and both of these have structures, whether they operate like corporations, whether they operate like bureaucracies. There are these structural aspects that define the physical or digital nature of the place. They define the framework of the system that things are going to act within. And whatever those conditions are will be the determining factor for what those will be the determining factor. And like when I think about that, like that's going to determine how we show up for each other, both physically and emotionally and socially, relationally, even like economically. Like, how do we move and act and behave based on what the structures either allow or don't allow us to do? And the reason I bring this up is not just to talk about that phenomenon, but also to view that in the context of how, oh, goodbye turtles, how that can sometimes prevent cultural change. The physical structures or physical structures can prevent change within the culture. And the reason is, in few words or less, is you can, how do I say this? You can you can try and make change, and those changes may occur, but they will inevitably be limited by whatever the physical structure dictates. So in this case about the Russian heating, when they went from I want to say Soviet capitalism to this form of almost neoliberalism that's kind of mixed with capitalism or communism. Sorry, I think I meant to say communism. When we look at that, like, it really does, the fact that heating was based on the state running it. The heating, yes, here we go. The heating system was based on a system where the state was in charge of it. It was all run and mandated and controlled by the bureaucracies of the state. And that's why they created the whole system that was like, okay, you've got one unit, everybody is hooked up to the water no matter what, because having water during winter or having hot water in winter in Russia should be a basic need that the state provides. That is what everybody agreed upon. But then when they tried to change and privatize it, and you're like, okay, well, we're going to have somebody control the marketing. It's not necessarily the marketing, but like we're going to create a new company to control each of the line items that are required for heating. So that might be the actual maintenance, that might be the reading of the heat, that might be the physical structure of itself. You have all that, and within that, it becomes extremely difficult to try and privatize something that is based upon a mindset and an ideology of something that is very much for the public. So, with that said, when we build certain structures, both digitally and physically, they are not just physical here's what it is. They are physical representation of ideals. Wow, that's blowing my mind. They are physical representation of ideals, especially in the way that they work in collaboration with each other. So if you have a bunch of architecture that's based on capitalist ideologies, they're going to create the conditions that allow the capitalist system to thrive. If you have structures that are built on communistic or socialistic ideologies, then they're going to have that built on that. If you have another form of like economic offering exchange system, then like they are going to represent that, and not just the economy, but also like the daily interactions of people. Because again, if capitalism is all about production and value, then like they're going to try and make everything as expensive as possible, because the goal of the system is to make as much money and wealth as possible. So they're itemizing and privatizing our daily lives because the system is built to prioritize to profit off of our daily lives. Now, how does that also affect like the everyday connections that we have? Well, going back to what I was saying in the first video, if we have these ideals that are held by the planners of the city, and these ideals become realized through the building of architecture, the building of this architecture emulates and creates an environment where those ideals can be expressed and reinforced, not just expressed, but also reinforced. And then through that reinforcement, you are setting limitations on what is and what is not acceptable or a social norm in the city or in that particular location. It doesn't have to be a city, but that community. So then you trace it all the way up and you connect that chain that was just built. Then you can say if all these things exist in incongruent and in continuity, I guess those are the words, with each other, then we can say that the city planners' ideologies can eventually manifest in the actions and the behaviors of the community that is within and under those city planners or those city leaders. So this makes me think of why it is vital to observe what are the restrictions and limitations placed on my culture because of the conditions of the environment around me. And if I want to make change, like what is required? More is required. Like you have to change the very framework and the pillars that something is built on if you want that to be the case. Like you have to do that, because if not, you're going to be trying to create a city in a place that is not built, or you're going to be trying to create a culture in a place that is not built for that culture to exist and thrive. It's no different as I walk around and I see like the different flora and fauna. Like if you plant, let's say that there's a super powerful, strong plant, very thriving, very large plant in like the Amazon. Now, if you brought it, let's bring 3 seeds. You bring one to another part of the Amazon. You bring another here. You bring another, since we were talking about it, to Russia. All these 3 things may be amazing on their own, and it's like we need to have these trees everywhere. But the tree's probably not going to thrive in Russia. If it did, that would be wild. But the tree's probably not going to thrive in Russia. The tree might not thrive in this place. It might do a little something, but it probably won't be what it is if it goes to the other place in the Amazon. So the soil, the environment, the climate of the Amazon is optimal for this particular thing to stay alive and thrive. The structures are integral to the survival of what exists within it. So it becomes a question of, well, not first off, it's not how do you dismantle a system. It's envisioning what you want the next system to be. Because you have to have perspective and vision, perhaps, before you start deconstructing. Because you'll continue to just deconstruct and deconstruct without getting to a particular point of like, okay, I've uprooted the foundation and now I'm ready to rebuild. Like, we talk about deconstruction, but like, what about the reconstructing aspect of it? Like, what about those things? So I think of like, why is it important for us to want to experience and observe other systems of life, other cultures, other cities, other communities? Why is it important for us to have variety amongst those things? Is because if it's all the same, like if there's a monopoly on culture, which there probably, fingers crossed, won't be, then you have no choice but to adhere to the principles of that monopoly, if you want to be involved in the culture. And you want to be involved in the culture because human beings have a need and a sense for belonging. And if you have to do A, B, C to get in and stay in the group, even if you may not like C, you're still going to do it because being in the group is more beneficial than not being in it. So using like human psychology and viewing it that way, like understanding humans like biological needs and psychological and social needs, like you could do some real algorithmic behavioral change because of structures, because these things exist. Like, that's mind-blowing. That's mind-blowing. But what's more mind-blowing is how this relates to the digital scapes that I was talking about earlier. Because the digital scape, like I mentioned, is becoming one of the largest, like, new territories for our human species. And in viewing the digital landscape as the frontier, like, you're gonna see people who are starting to build foundations. You're gonna see people who are starting to build digital communities and civilizations on the internet, where people who may not feel the pull and draw in real life will go. And I'm not here to shame and say like, oh, digital communities are bad for us. I think that they have their place, and I think that they're going to be inevitable, and I think that a lot of people can actually benefit from them. And I'm also in the same camp of thinking that human interaction is still probably more paramount than the digital connections. Now, if we did a hybrid version and put the two together, I like the idea of physical supplemented by digital, as opposed to digital supplemented by physical. So with that, I think it's like, I think it's interesting that if you get a foothold in the digital space, and let's say that you inevitably do create a monopoly, because you might either A, have that level of influence, B, you might digest and assimilate smaller other communities into one larger sect due to said power and influence. And then after all that, you come around and then you start laying structure, whether you created it from your own or you got it from elsewhere. Like, you've created that structure, you've created this framework, and now you're about to fill this container that you shaped with your hands. You're going to fill that with people. And you're going to fill that with their norms, their behaviors, their values, their symbols. You're going to fill that container with all of that. But depending on, see, you fashion the container well because you created it where it will cause the general assimilation, whether it's conscious or unconscious. You will see that the language that you created for the container to use will become more normalized and used. You will see that the activities that you promote will become the promoted activities. You will see that the things that you value and align with will in turn be like in alignment, or they that's what the people will align themselves as, even though many, if not all, will have some difference of opinion on how the culture may perceive and exist. And yet, despite their hesitations, the need and the desire and the want to be seen and to be noticed and to be connected is so deeply ingrained in us that despite their own misgivings and hesitations, they will still go forward and go and accept the invitation into that digital scape, because that is better than not having anything at all. And especially if they don't have much going on in their regular physical life. And conversely, you look at the people in the group, you see the uniformity, you see the synergy that exists, but you wonder, is it manufactured? Or is that real? Is this really who we are and what we want to be? Or is this who we are when we're within these cultural constraints? Which one am I really being real, the real me, if in order to enter the door, I got to take off half of me and I got to put on another suit that really isn't my suit? And is it possible to bring innovation and ideas to spaces like this that have a clear and defined goal, that we are trying to build what we want for this? Your ideas, while they may sound good and in theory, they're not what our structure is designed for. So you either have to go design your own, because you're not changing what's here. Even if you oust me, unless you tear down the system, I'm still going to be the one on top. So, I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? Oh, looks like my possum friend is gone. I'll maybe splice this video together and show a little clip. I saw a little possum on the road and it was really cute. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my neighbor right there. And yeah, go say hey to a neighbor. Don't make it weird, but speak to your neighbor. You might not be able to change the structures, but we can at least attempt and have hope for the behaviors that we can inspire and change within ourselves, even if it's only temporary.